So I would like to open the meeting at 7:07. And we'll start with a quick roll call of the subcommittee members. We'll start with the administrators, Dana Hadley and Russell Tatro. And they are both here.
Yep, here. We'll start on the live stream.
Yeah, and then we'll move on to the actual committee members. Myself, Chair Dave Hemingway, I'm here. Marty Bender. I thought I just saw him join. Oh yeah, he's there.
Yes, I'm here.
And let's see, Sue Roth.
Here.
Craig Fournier.
Here.
Betsy Janeway.
Here.
And Dan Nudd.
Here.
All right, thank you all for coming. And of course, we do have the meeting agenda, so we've opened the meeting. I will start with a quick announcement for everybody. As we are moving forward with the solar project, we have talked with Olivewood, and they will be taking us on a site walk at some point in the to be determined future. And that will be to go around the bounds and include the chairs of the various boards and committees. And so look for some details coming on that, unless they have more to share right now.
Just realizing I was muted there. Yes, we do have a little bit more detail to share there. And I did want to just sort of be clear to folks. We are happy and excited and looking forward to doing a site walk with the town's chosen environmental expert, who we understand appears likely to be Rick Vanderpool. So we are looking forward to that. In terms of folks from town joining us, we think that it makes sense if it's a smaller group. From our perspective, either chairs or like designees of the various sort of boards and commissions. We find that these meetings are a little bit more productive when the groups are smaller, and then also keeping in mind, we are still going through a pandemic here, and limiting the number of folks that we are sort of gathering together and walking from property to property with is probably best from a public health perspective as well. But regarding timing, we were actually thinking about it a little bit more. We think May makes sense from our perspective, particularly given that it gives us some more opportunity to see vegetation and habitats, which really is largely going to be sort of the focus of the expert.
All right.
Yeah, but it won't be so buggy in April. On you.
That is true. That is true. We'll have to be cautious about making sure we're bringing folks out not at twilight, dusk or dawn. Avoid the mosquitoes.
All right. And so look forward to more information on that upcoming. The next portion will be the draft minutes. And so does anyone have any comments on those? All right, I had a couple quick ones. These were our draft minutes from January 26th, making note that we did not meet last month. So page 2, line 16, Energy Commission should be Energy Committee. And it should say that we were interested in reviewing the MOU as it develops, because the Energy Committee wasn't going to be creating part of the MOU, because they're not really involved in the same sort of planning board or environmental areas. Page 2, line 34 and 37 was saying herbicides, and that should have been herbicides and pesticides, because many of the examples had previously been about pesticides. And page 3, line 18, hunting pressure should be hunting preserve. Does anybody else have any comments or corrections to make in the minutes from January 2016? 2016, okay, 26. All right, hearing none, I'd move that we adopt the minutes from January 26th as amended.
Second the motion.
All right, and we'll take our roll call for that. Dave Hemingway, yes. I'll just go in the order I see on the Zoom screen. Craig Fournier, yes. Susan Roth,
Yes.
Dan Nudd,
Yes.
Betsy Janeway,
Abstain.
Martin Bender.
Yes.
All right. And so that passes with one abstain. Moving along, we now have our general business. So we'll get right into it. We have a map presentation and discussion. Of course, I sent out the map so that you could have a copy as well if you wanted, but let's go ahead and let, is it Dominic, are you going to be the one doing that screen share and presentation?
I am, yes. And if you
All
could
right.
please enable, I'm happy to bring it up.
And Russ should be able to do that. And let it be known that we do have our guests here, and I will let them all introduce themselves as that gets set up from Olivewood Energy.
Sure. Starting, just say hi to folks. My name is Dominic LaBelle. I'm with Olivewood Energy and Deer Meadow Solar here. I do sort of a variety of roles for the team here. Typically, a person who's engaging in meetings like this and talking to folks directly, a lot of stakeholder meetings. I'm typically the person where if a butter has particular questions or wants to learn more about the project, the person that they would speak to about that. So sort of a host of things here. And I am joined as well by my colleague, Ben Chamberlain, who is welcome to introduce himself further. And we shortly will be joined, I believe, by Mike Kaplan, who is president of Olivewood as well.
Thanks, Dom. Yep, Ben Chamberlain here. I mostly do work on the interconnection and sort of site planning side, and some of the electrical design as well. You know, we all wear lots of hats on the Olivewood end, so I think as Dom can attest to.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and just for the purpose of our meeting minutes accurately showing who has attended, I see that we have Dan White present and LM. I'm not sure who that is. If you could unmute and let us know, that would be appreciated. And then I also see that Suzanne Fournier.
Yes,
All
good
right.
evening. Hi, Suzanne Fournier,
All right. Thank
interested
you for
member
coming.
of the public.
All right. And unfortunately, we have not heard from LM yet, but that's okay. I see Dominic getting the coffee ready. So presentation time, I'll let you go ahead and take it away and let us know about these maps.
You always got to get one last sip of coffee in before you start doing a presentation. It's a lesson I've come to learn.
Absolutely.
But I am here representing Deer Meadow Solar, legal name Hopkinton Solar, doing business as Deer Meadow. This is the Town of Webster Solar Project Subcommittee meeting of March 23rd, 2021. And there we go. Excellent. Is everyone able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. We wanted to sort of start by refreshing folks on how it is that we got to today. I sort of have a map here that I'll explain more in just a second, and sort of will be a bit described in the following. But essentially, it shows our original point of interconnection to the south of the Hopkinton-Webster joint landfill site, the currently planned point of interconnection on the 230 kV line, and indicates which parcels were in sort of the earlier iteration of the project and which have been publicly discussed starting sort of October and in the fall of last year. So to just sort of back up for 1 second here, we've been working closely with two towns since spring of 2018. So this is a project that's sort of been worked on for a while here. The project originally began as a 17 megawatt project located entirely on the jointly owned land associated with the transfer station. After signing the LOI, it became clear, discussing with the boards, that they'd really prefer the project to be off of and away from the transfer station and the landfill cap. We agreed to it then, and I wanted to note for folks, there was a while back in the fall that mentioned an HPR radio hit that we were placing panels on the landfill. That is not the case. We are staying off of and away from it. So once we got that feedback from the towns, we sought to incorporate some private land in order to sort of make it economical to interconnect the project at the scale that we were looking at. We briefed the select board and then the public on the 35 megawatt iteration in summer of 2019. We discussed that project a couple different times with the select board, sort of behind the scenes, and publicly introduced it at that scale as well. In the fall of 2019, the town and Hopkinton Solar executed the lease and pilot agreements on the 35 megawatt iteration of the project. In early 2020, and if folks have follow-up questions, Ben Chamberlain here would be more apt to describe this in a Q&A, but we got some interconnection information back indicating significantly less capacity on the line than we previously expected. So we reached out to the town administrators and let them know that we would be seeking out a new interconnection location. About a month later, it came back and sort of described, hey, this is sort of what we're going to be targeting here. We identified the line that's indicated as I mentioned a bit earlier. And given the much larger scale of that line, being a 230 kV versus the originally planned 34.5, the cost to interconnect was going to be significantly higher. So at that time, we sought to spread those additional costs over additional megawattage by incorporating some expansion acreage, which is also identified on the map here. And our focus was to identify flat, dry, well-screened land in the area. And we spent much of 2020 working on agreements, completing environmental studies, and then most of the fall providing public updates on sort of the where the project was at. So to update folks on some of the progress that we have made since the public hearing back in December, we are working with the select board on a reimbursement agreement for legal and environmental review. We're happy to provide the funds associated with that. Want to make sure the town is able to fully review everything. And we have completed some additional field work in relation to the visual analysis, geotechnical investigation for the potential array areas, which will be on the map in the following slide. So I'll get to that in just a moment. But also completed wetland delineations and site-specific soil mapping for those potential array areas. To be clear, there are some small non-array areas that we'll be finishing up delineation on in the spring as well. But again, those are outside of the planned array areas at this time. We've completed the consultation with New Hampshire Division of Historic Resources and the Phase 1B survey. Again, for within those potential array areas, there is some remaining survey activity outside of the PAAs, as we're sort of calling them. And we are continuing consultation relating to habitats and rare, threatened, and endangered species. We've consulted with U.S. Department of the Interior, done a data check with NHB, and soon to be working with Fish and Game on the wildlife assessment. And recently we provided an update indicating the conditions existing at the site, including those delineated wetlands and vernal pools. We view these maps as a tool for us to provide the information to the town on what areas sort of could be developed responsibly in the opinion of our professional consultants, and as well as to begin to get feedback and act as a tool for input on specific locations that the town may have additional information or interest in beyond that which is available elsewhere. So to orient folks on what it is that you're sort of looking at here, I'll take just a second to describe sort of what the colors are. Can folks see my mouse?
Yes.
Excellent. So this sort of lighter blue areas that you'll see here are the potential array areas. The sort of lighter green are the delineated wetlands. You'll see some streams in this darker blue here, both here and here. Indicated in pink are vernal pools that were surveyed at the site as well. So there's a couple sort of within wetland areas. The black rectangles here are associated with the substation and interconnection equipment next to the existing 230 kV line. And the red areas that you see are land associated with the project. So essentially, that would be the sort of broader project parcels within which the project will be located. So to be clear with folks on a couple of things, and this is noted along the side here, there is the delineated wetlands shown. Actually, I should mention as well, these are floodplain areas, the sort of black crosshatched areas. And for the potential array areas, we don't anticipate developing all of the identified potential array area. I would expect that we would likely choose to exclude some of the smaller non-contiguous areas. Like there are some areas up here where it's unlikely that they will be developed, but they were identified as being outside of setback areas to the resources identified on site. I will come back to this map just to be clear for folks. I think it'll probably be helpful if I have this up as folks are asking questions. This is essentially the same map, but instead of a satellite imagery background, it's just a clearer street map that is available just for those folks who may or may not be able to see things particularly well with some of the satellite imagery background. And lastly is a map indicating those potential array areas and the broader parcel shapes and sizes associated with the project, as well as the floodplain areas as well. And I also thought it made sense for us to talk a little bit about next steps associated with the project. And again, we can get a little more into these in Q&A. But we view it as sort of three categories, and those are the shorter term to-dos here, which we view as first getting a finalized reimbursement agreement with the town. We want to make sure that the town feels comfortable in its review process and knows that those funds are there and available. Schedule and complete the site walk. As I mentioned before, we are anticipating May. We don't have an exact date yet. It's partially just sort of a function of I guess how rainy and sort of weather between now and then, and trying to get out of mud season a little bit if we can, and also completing the pilot update. We had proposed updates to the pilot there, and I believe there's still some conversation and some things to be looked into on the town side. For ongoing activities, we plan to continue consultation with the state agencies and the development and operational parameters in different processes. So continuing that civil design, the engineering associated with that, and making sure that we are sort of crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's, as well as additional outreach to neighbors and stakeholders. Neighbors in particular is something that we certainly would have handled a little bit earlier, but given some of the weirdness in the world regarding COVID, it's just been a little bit more difficult to go out and sort of knock on folks' door in a way that that they are comfortable with, and that can be sort of done safely. There are a number of neighbors who I've spoken to after some of the meetings that we had done in the fall. And if anybody else has any questions or wants to sit down with me, in general, I'm pretty open and flexible and available to do so. For the longer term items, we have the memorandum of understanding on here. It is worth noting that in the sort of shorter term, we might be able to address some of the items that would be in the memorandum of understanding that are not sort of design oriented. Things like traffic routes for construction. Those sorts of items are the type of thing, or during construction process, how often are we notifying town of various things, and how long in advance of construction would notice the town. Those are the types of items that we can work through without having the full civil design completed. And then we also view sort of the last step here as submitting and working through the SEC process. And you'll note that at the bottom of the slide here, I just wanted to make sure it was sort of abundantly clear to folks here. Not only are there public hearings that are sort of required as part of the SEC process, but on nights like tonight and 2 or 3 meetings back in the fall as well, and a number of meetings moving forward and the site walk, there's going to be a lot of chances for folks from the public and from the town to have input and be involved in the process. We really are happy to answer questions. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time. I do want to flash my contact information here for anybody who does not have it. I throw it up at every meeting. I think it might be on the subcommittee page, maybe not. Not certain there, but just in
I would have
case.
to look, but if you would like it there, I can make sure it is.
I think it probably makes sense. We want folks to be able to reach out whenever it is that they're curious about something and make sure that they're getting to the right people. So I'd be happy if you would add it there, Dave. It's totally all right with me. And in order to sort of provide folks with that map from which we can sort of base some of the discussion, I guess, Dave, I'll throw it back to you. I don't know if you wanted to sort of talk through next steps or go through anything specific, or just sort of open up to broader Q&A. I'll kind of defer to you on that.
So I think I'll open up to Q&A in 1 second. I did want to cover 2 of the things that you mentioned.
Sure.
One, the reimbursement agreements. We tentatively said that we're going to be accepting that. We're making sure that everything is good and kosher. So that's going through legal. I expect roughly 2 weeks from now, at our next select board meeting, we'll make a final decision as far as signing that, not or sending something back to you that might be different. As far as input from various people, I want to make sure that people are aware that there are certainly things like this where I will bring in Olivewood, Dominic, etc., to talk to us as the subcommittee. But there will also be various public hearings that will be held by the select board that will be for a broader base of people. And I would expect that, for example, when they have more of the civil engineering style done and more to present, like this is exactly where we're planning to put things instead of where we can put things. I would expect that we'll probably see a public hearing around that time and that time frame. And I believe we have to have a public hearing when we discuss the updated pilot signing at the select board as well. So you can look forward to those and being able to voice your input at the select board public hearings for those. I guess that's my couple quick updates. And so I want to open it up first to subcommittee members to please ask Dominic anything you want to know, or if you see a location that you think shouldn't be the way it is, also please let him know.
So this is Craig Fournier speaking. I live on Deer Meadow Road, and I've walked and hunted on pretty much all of this land. And I think your delineation of wetlands is correct. I don't see any, it looks right to me. My question to you is do you have enough land there for the number of panels that you believe you need?
Yes, based on our design parameters right now, we believe that there is adequate room for a 75 megawatt project.
Okay. Can I ask who owns that open land on the north side of Deer Meadow Road? And the access road into that property, who owns the access road into that property?
So I just want to make sure the cleared section of land on the north side of Deer Meadow Road.
Yes, that is correct.
That is owned by Horizon Holdings. And for the access road, currently we are planning to utilize an existing access road that goes up the existing transmission cut owned by National Grid. We are in discussions with the utility on that particular item. It's not something where they finalize the agreement until a little bit later on in the process. But we have been assured by them that it's no problem, and it is also in the best interest of National Grid, as it allows them sufficient proper access to the interconnection equipment as well.
So the lower part of that, that lower part of the power line is very swampy. I mean, you're going to have to do something about that.
Yeah,
So put an access road through there.
Yeah, we expect that there will be improvements made.
Yeah.
But in order to, avoid any additional impacts, using an existing road is our preferred method.
And who owns the current access road into that property?
The one that goes up the transmission line?
No, the one.
The one to the east over here?
Yeah, that one.
My understanding is that is Mr. White, who was on the call.
That is me, Craig.
Yeah, and does he have, have you given permission to Olivewood for use, or what's the agreement with Horizon?
There's no current agreement.
I mean, it looks like a pretty well-built road.
Yeah, our intention at this time is to use the National Grid transmission line road.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Thank you, Craig.
It's Dan Nudd. Good evening. How are you going to connect the two parcels? Because it doesn't look, well, I can't tell from the map. Do you own in between? How are you going to get your power lines across Deer Meadow Road into the other parcel? Will you need easements? How are you planning on doing that?
Easements, yes. And sorry, I was getting a little bit of audio feedback there for a moment from somebody. Yes, it will be easements. And you can actually sort of see here where some of the delineated wetlands are. The easements will be running through there, and we've been working with those landowners.
And so you may not know this yet, but for the easements, are you expecting to do more pole and line, or are you expecting to do underground, or a mix of both?
Still determining that at this time, what would be most appropriate. There's just a whole host of studies that goes into it that will make that determination based off of.
Hi, Dom. I have a question. This is Susan Roth. So where the, what Dan was just talking about, where you just had the cursor crossing the wetland with an easement, and is there water in there too? Does that show the water too?
There is a brook, and that's what's identified as being within that wetland area.
Right.
There's a blue line here that sort of roughly indicates the stream. Yeah.
So that's going to be an easement over to the other side. Are you planning to fill that, or what are you thinking about? What are you talking about there?
Our intention would not be to fill there. It would be to either have poles that bridge over the wetland areas or likely to directionally bore underneath them so as to avoid impacts.
Okay. So, and then this big area that's a potential array down south of Deer Meadow, that's all land that Olivewood owns?
That is all land that is under option. Yes.
For purchase. And that's how it's distinguished between the landowner parcels. Is that why?
I'm not sure that I understood that question, but it is a mix of purchase and lease options.
Right. But you have some in sort of a pinkish outline that's the landowner parcels.
Yes. Sorry. So just to be clear on the distinction between the red and the blue, I think that's sort of what you're getting at there.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The red areas are indicating the entire, and actually maybe this is easier if I go over to this here. The red areas are indicating the broader outline of the parcels, their total shapes and sizes. And the blue is within those parcels where we are likely to, or where we could develop responsibly, in the opinion of the folks that we've been working with. It's not meant to designate between lease versus purchase, the two colors.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I see that now. I guess I'm just a little confused about the key.
I totally get that, and particularly on the satellite imagery, it's a little bit busy of an image. I can totally see where you're coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guess I'll head to our other two members, Betsy or Marty. Do either of you have questions or comments?
I'm struggling. I've got my tax map in my lap, and I wish I could match the page and the tax map lot numbers to your map. I'm trying desperately to do that. I'm having a hard time.
So I don't happen to know the numbers offhand, but if you see the kind of white property just to the east of the southern delineated section that
Yes.
has the mouse highlighting over it right now, that is Copart.
Yeah, I know that. Maybe I'll get to meet with you and bring my tax map, and you can tell me where we are. Because I have land on the other side. I own land on the other side of Deer Meadow. Look, it's going to come right up to the array here, and I'm naturally concerned.
I'd be happy to sit down and review a map with you, if it would help you to better understand some areas.
Yeah.
Happy to. Yeah. I believe I have your phone number, Betsy. I'm happy to schedule that offline if you'd like.
Okay. Good.
Just going to make
If
a
I
note.
can be of a very quick assistance, just to give you some numbers, Betsy, 9-11, this is Dan White. I would be the lower one, the one we were just talking about, right below the large area to the right of Deer Meadow. Yes, right where the Dom's pointing out.
That's
Directly to the left of the large parcel is actually 9-9. So hopefully that gives you some orientation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you, Dan.
I have a question, Dom.
Absolutely.
What is the, if you know the answer, what would be the general extent that the environmental scientist who comes out and reviews this, what would be all the different issues that they're looking at? Do you know?
Well, I suppose that's largely a function of what it is that the town in their process and the agreement that they come to with the environmental expert. I think that will be a little bit more specific about what in particular he's being asked to do. From my perspective, it would appear that a general site walk, have an understanding of the reports that we'll be providing as part of the SEC process, and reviewing specific areas within the site where he may have particular questions or an interest, or where it is identified by an individual like yourself or maybe a member of Conservation Commission to be a habitat area. I imagine those would be sort of that individual's focus. But Dave, I don't know if you wanted to provide any additional context there.
I think that's probably fairly accurate. We're still in the process of signing the agreement with him. That's also out with the reimbursement plan. So I expect we'll have a bit more information and context in 2 weeks at the next select board meeting.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned sort of at the top of the call here, sorry if I'm sort of looking off to the side. I'm trying to look at the videos of people while they're talking to me.
I know we've had in the past a general overview for sense of scale. Do you have a concept at this time of the acreages for things?
Sure. My colleague Ben on the call might be able to give you an idea for the amount of acreage roughly that we would anticipate to be panel areas. But as a bit of context, the red areas identified here, so the parcels within which the project is located, is I believe about 614 acres. So as you can see, there's sort of large chunks of this that we are staying off of and away from. But that'll give you some context. And Ben, are you still on?
I am, and let me quickly pull up. I know we are seeking to, sort of locate around 260, 265 acres of panel arrays within sort of the blue areas. The blue areas we're showing here are considerably larger than that. And let me see if I can get a measurement of exactly how big they are. But this development area we're showing here is larger than the area we'd expect to actually put panels on in the end. This is just sort of our identification process.
Like I mentioned a little bit earlier when I was first showing the map, some of the smaller, less contiguous areas are unlikely to be developed there. Some of the stuff down here, there's a couple of different areas there. Ultimately, it'll be a function of the civil design, and as we get a little bit further on and start developing things like stormwater management plans, and just get a little bit further along in the process. But for now, we thought the sort of best tool to have some more advanced conversations and really get feedback and input from the town would be to identify those areas where panels could go. And then sort of work down from there once we get that feedback and input, and also the input of the environmental expert.
Dom, how many panels did you expect to put in?
Ben may have a better sense of that than myself.
Sure. Well, right now the panels that we're looking at working with are around 525 watts each. I can do some quick back of the envelope math here and get you to a number. But typically, let me do some of that math actually on my calculator here just for a second and get you an accurate number. I know we've put something down in the past. Before I jump to that, I just want to point out that the area in blue marked here is right around 300 acres, I believe. So from there, we'd be cutting it down, paring it down to arrive at a number close to 260, 265 for the panel areas. And let me take a quick look and come up with a rough panel number for you. One of the things I'll say on the electrical end is, we'll be 75 megawatts on the AC side. So these panels are going to be producing direct current power. We'll use an inverter to convert those to alternating current. So typically we'll have a number of DC panels slightly higher than the 75 megawatt on the AC side. In the solar side, you call it the DC-AC ratio. And typically, because your solar panels aren't producing at all hours, you get a few extra just so that you can get a better production profile during the day and provide a little bit more energy to the grid.
So how many panels?
So that would be right around.
Hello. And just to be clear, he's doing some back of the envelope math.
I would say, Ben, this is Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh, hey, Mike.
I just put my youngest to bed. I would say rather than a specific number right now, why don't we get back with some ranges? It's going to depend a bit on the particular model. Ben was estimating probably using one particular one, but that may change and it's going to be a function of the ultimate TCAC ratio. So we'll get back to you with some estimates as a range, but I don't think you should do a specific number, Ben.
Vague number would do. 100? I mean, some number.
More. Yeah, just give like an indicative range, because you don't have to set the DCAC before doing it.
Yeah, understood. I mean, I think we're looking at something in the range of 175,000 individual modules, and those will be grouped up onto, tilted racks that can carry, around 24 to 48, depending on the length, panels at a time.
75,000 individual models?
175,000 panel modules themselves.
Panel modules. What's a panel module?
So sure, think of like, your standard solar panel is a rectangle. One of those rectangles would be a module. Apologies for the terminology there.
You can't fit 175 of them in there, 1,000 of them. You're not talking about. I'm misunderstanding you. You're saying you're putting in 175,000 solar panels? I don't believe that.
Yep, that would be, that's about how many we expect we can get onto the site here, yes.
My God, that's a hell of a lot of panels.
It does tend to work out to be a big number there, yeah.
Enough electricity for, about 38,000 New Hampshire residents, coming from a clean energy project. So it is.
And could you explain, I gather you probably talked about this earlier, but I still don't understand how come you have the AC, that would be in the north of Deer Meadow Road, and south of Deer Meadow Road you have the direct, is that right? Alternate?
Yeah, and sure, I mean, we can we're a little into the weeds here, but effectively the panels will each be set up with local inverters. So we'll have a couple inverters located throughout the project. Those convert the electricity from direct current to alternating current. The alternating current is what the grid uses. So each of those inverters will be spaced out around the panel arrays and connected to a certain number of panels. We'll gather up the power, coming from the alternating current side of those and send them over towards the substation to connect them to the main grid.
Ben, this is Dan. Did I hear you correctly? I thought you said 70 megawatts at 1 second there. Did you mean to say that?
75 megawatts.
75 is the size of the project here. Apologies if
I thought we were talking about 35. It's 75.
It is.
35 was the project prior to the expansion, when it was just the one or two properties down at the bottom and the transfer station. And when they had to switch the lines to the transmission line that you can see here, the larger line, instead of the 34.5 kV that's just out front of the transfer station. When they had to switch that's when they looked at all of the extra lots and the expansion. And so that's what brought it up to 75.
So at 75, where's the end use? Because the New Hampshire power market's fairly, well, the last month doesn't count, but it's been fairly saturated with power for the generators. I mean, the average ISO price is 3.5 cents, give or take. So is this power getting used in New Hampshire, or is this getting transmitted down to Mass or somewhere else going on these lines?
Well, so I think from our perspective, we would prefer, it's certainly our preference to keep the power here in New Hampshire if we're able. Thus far, over the past couple of years, we have found that the state doesn't really make that particularly easy. Back in 2019, there was a bill about going through the New Hampshire legislature about a clean energy RFP. And there is that bill was unfortunately vetoed by the governor. Again, this year, there are some efforts to establish a clean energy RFP of some kind. Our hope is that process leads to a platform through which we could keep power here in New Hampshire. And we ideally would like to, but in the event that we're not able to find a way to do so, yes, the power may end up being used in one of the neighboring states. But Mike Kaplan, who's on, could speak to that a bit further.
Sure, I'll express it a little bit differently in that some of the neighboring states have additional tools that would help facilitate the development of a new project in terms of RFP processes, competitive processes for long-term offtake. Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, a number of surrounding states. There were the historical efforts. There are some ongoing efforts within the state, but even those are helpful. But absent those, there are other approaches, other tools in terms of long-term offtake available from market participants. So it's not the average price of power that really applies. It's really looking at what's the value of power at the time that a facility is producing. And we have looked extensively at what the expected value of this power is and the opportunities for marketing it, and believe that it's a good fit at this size. And that's the commercial and the paper side. In terms of the physical reality of it, the production from this facility would actually line up quite well timing-wise with when there are actually the peak loads in New Hampshire and the maximum requirements here. So whatever the paper does say, and we do hope that there are tools that we can find for keeping the power commercially here. Physically, we would expect that it would be significant use here in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Mike.
I might have actually been shorter than you in speaking for once.
Once you put that power in the power line, you don't know where it goes, do you? Who allocates where that goes?
That's fair. So there's the electrons are going to go where physics say they should go, but there's still approaches for contracting for the power where, say, utilities have obligations to make sure that they are acquiring the power, or competitive suppliers have obligations to make sure that they're providing the power for their customers. And there are different parts of those obligations, be it the electricity, how much of the electricity is clean. And then there are other things called capacity that relate to the resilience of the grid. So the long and the short of it is physics is going to tell us where the electrons go. That physics is largely going to be a function of how much demand is there at any one particular time, and what's the size of the pipe and how much is trying to get through it. And when we look at the demand in New Hampshire compared to when the production is from this project, we see local potential benefit from that. And we'll have to see where the contracts end up being. So
if I can paraphrase, I mean, it sounds like it's a free market, right? I mean, supply and demand, and you're the supplier, and basically you don't have any control over where that stuff goes.
The physical flow moment by moment, yes, but the reality is that utilities suppliers in each market have to make sure that they have procured the power that they're going to provide to their customers. And so moment by moment, what you're saying is correct, but over the longer term, there's still a need for utilities in each location to enter agreements for power.
Well, when you sell this power, I assume you have a long-term agreement with some power company, right? To supply a certain amount of power.
That's what typically happens, yes.
And so you,
some power company or some other
they're the buyer and you're the seller, and once that transaction takes place, that's it.
It depends. The simplest form is something like that, but there can be more complicated forms as well.
Okay, I'll quit harassing you here now.
No, and I'm happy to. If you'd like to talk about it more, happy to talk about it more.
And so I'll jump in here with one of those more complicated ways of looking at it. The Energy Committee has been appointed by the Select Board to consider how, when, and if community power will make sense. And then we will be able to have that conversation with the project here as well. And so those are all sorts of things that are going on. Unfortunately, the community power, or fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the bill for community power is getting changed, or appears to be getting changed this year in the legislature of New Hampshire. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But we are hoping that we can come up with something for community power to help both the ratepayers here and the solar company at the same time.
And to be clear, Craig, don't feel bad. Mike would go all night talking with you about the physics of how these things work.
All right, so I believe we've given a chance for all of the board, the subcommittee members to speak. I want to make sure that we can open this up to the public as well, which I believe is just two folks. And so please, if you have any questions or comments on the particular areas or the plots or questions, please let us know.
This is Dan. I do have just two very quick questions. Not that you have to show them now, but have you received the results of the soil testing that we had talked about, Dom, some of the concerns with regards to stumps, or is it too early in the process?
Sure. Well, the stumps, we have received geotechnical regarding all of the proposed or potential array areas. And in terms of your specific question regarding the stumps, that's something that can be identified. There was nothing that came up regarding stumps that identified an area as not being suitable. There can be some tweaks in the specific process and practice in a given area in terms of the placement and process for identification of placement of the piles, but nothing that included any significant area.
Okay, and will you be sharing those results throughout the process at some point?
They're more of an input in the civil design, I'd say the geotechnical, and would be part of the permit application. But I think that's how I would see that information being shared.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Dave. Thank you.
Hello, are you ready to hear from me, Suzanne Fournier?
Hello.
Good evening.
Please.
Hello, good evening. Just one easy question, I think. So can Olivewood Energy tell us what the wildlife species are that were reported by the Natural Heritage Bureau?
Go ahead, Mike. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you there.
Yeah, we do have that information, and there were a couple of species that will require certain, in terms of certain specific areas to avoid, and then certain processes during both construction and operations to avoid impacting them. Particularly the black racer snake, so there'll also likely be an environmental monitor. But in terms of the broader list of species and the approach to each one and the mitigation, that will be part of the wildlife assessment. They'll next go to Fish and Game and go through a process with Fish and Game
Yes, I was just curious. So you mentioned the black racer snake,
Mhm.
and what are another number of species? Several others? Can you name?
Is there, I guess, is there, sure, yeah, I don't have that list in front of me.
I have there was also black racer, wood turtles, and skillet clubtail. Were the three that I recall.
Okay, skillet. What's the last word?
Clubtail.
A clubtail. What type of animal is that? A skillet clubtail.
Off the top of my head, I don't particularly recall.
Okay.
But it's something where, as Mike mentioned, we'll be submitting a wildlife assessment to Fish and Game,
Yes.
where we'll discuss best management practices, and we'll certainly be learning a lot more about them at that time.
Yes, I understand. Thank you. I'll look up on the internet when the meeting's over. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
So I just did a quick Google on skillet clubtail, and it says it's a dark brown dragonflies with pale yellowish or green markings on the body and bright green eyes.
Yeah. Dragonflies.
Betsy being our conservation person that is here at the moment and sits on the solar subcommittee.
Mhm.
Did you just hear what I said, or did I?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. Apologies.
I was looking at images as well.
Yeah, I was actually doing the exact same thing. I was doing some Googling.
So the Fish and Game, actually, the process for the consultation with them has evolved more broadly, not as it relates to our project in particular. And so they, I think, will be more involved in evaluation of our project and others going forward than they may have been in the past. But we're working with TRC on the wildlife assessment and expect that we will be putting together that likely during April. They've done the field work that they believe is required for it, and they're just waiting for input on some additional items, and then we're going to review their proposed, their view of each of the species and habitat and thoughts regarding what measures are needed or what areas would potentially need to be further avoided. But their view was that date, the information does not, the information supports that these areas would be suitable. But we will obviously have the consultation we were just describing.
And I do have, I'm sorry, this is Dan White. Just one quick additional question. And again, if you don't have the answer now, I'm not intending to put anybody on the spot at this point, but with regards to the environmental question there, it just made me think about, I noticed on your map, I believe it read a 50-foot buffer around, and we've talked a little bit about recreation and the snowmobile trails that were there. Not sure if you had a chance to kind of find out if there's any potential options there yet, or it's still on your list of something to do in the future. I do know it's early in the process.
Yeah, certainly we'll look to coordinate directly with the current trail master in terms of learning about exactly both what conditions are now as well as in the past. We've certainly taken a look at available snowmobile maps through the state. And our intention is for access to continue through the area. We had heard some comments from folks about some of those areas being blocked off. And I just sort of want to be clear with everybody here. That was not a request of ours. That was not due to us. And that was not done with the intention of assisting us in any way. That any closure of snowmobile trails has been completely unrelated to our activities.
But I think in terms of, yeah, okay.
So a question for you, as you've shown us some of kind of the next steps and such. I know that there are a lot of different studies and or reports that will be coming over time, whether it is something such as economic impacts or something like noise or the visual impacts. can you give kind of a list of the more major of those and which ones you may expect us to see next? Not necessarily a specific time, but kind of next.
Sure. Sorry, Mike, I think you and I both just want to speak at the
No,
same
I'm
time.
sorry. You're welcome.
Yeah, no, you mentioned a couple of them there. There will be economic impact studies as part of the SEC process, pretty sort of prescriptive on some of the required studies and reports. The economic impact report, sound, visual, some of this stuff we've already done some of the sort of preliminary field work for, but there is additional work to be done. And also to be clear, for some of those studies, sound and visual in particular, there is modeling associated with that. That modeling will sort of largely be based on some of the civil design stuff that's going to be upcoming. So it may be a touch longer on some of those particular items, but we would also anticipate a decommissioning study and decommissioning plan as part of the project. Those are sort of top of mind for me. And we've sort of already completed a number of them as well. The wetland delineation, vernal pool survey, phase 1A and 1B in regards to cultural and historic resources. So a number of the studies we've already sort of worked our way through. But yes, there are some sort of upcoming items here, and Mike may be able to speak a bit more to timeline.
Sure. I'm going to speak more about the order and then some indications on time, because there are a couple of items that have taken a bit longer than we had hoped throughout this process, and there's at least one that may coming up and could have some ripple. So the next thing this is the wildlife assessment is something we're going to be working on during this month and in April. The timeline for Fish and Game's review of that, is something that we'll have to see as we go along what it's going to be, just given the demands on Fish and Game at this moment. And in terms of the visual impact, that is going to be based on the ultimate visual impact assessment will be based on the design for the project. And so that will be later. That's why we're doing certain spot preliminary visual impact images at this time. We've been out, some folks may have seen us doing certain field work, and we'll provide some images, some simulations based on those locations using an indication of where the panels may be. It's most likely more of a larger footprint, frankly, than the ultimate one used for those images. But we're going to do that as an interim step, and I expect that we would have those couple of spot images over the next few weeks. In terms of the sound, I'll have to come back to the date. I don't have the Gantt in front of me. In terms of the economic assessment, that would typically come, I would expect that to be several months from now. So I'm trying to think of it more from the standpoint of just studies. Yeah, I would say, so then the next one I would expect then would be the wildlife assessment or some subset of the wildlife assessment, if there's a portion of it that we need to keep confidential, not due to our requirements, but there are restrictions on what information is shared regarding the location of rare, threatened, or endangered species as a means of protecting those species. So it likely be information gleaned from, but not the entirety of wildlife assessment.
Okay, thank you very much. And kind of roughly where in the list, like, so when you mentioned the studies and kind of their order, where in that order do you expect we might see more of the civil design style mapping, whether it be access roads or the medium levels of like where the panels and the transfer lines and stuff.
So I think what may be helpful here is, so we're approaching this thinking of the objective in terms of protecting the natural resources and as well as other considerations of the town. And some of that is an integration of both location as well as other elements of the design and the stormwater management plan, because those things work together. It's all of them together, and those would be available. It would be certainly after the wildlife assessment is when that I would expect that we'd be in a position to provide that broader package. But I'd like to get a better idea of how long this wildlife assessment process is going to take before I come back with a date for when we think we can provide that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I was just looking for kind of like where in the process order it would fall, not necessarily a projected date. Thank you. All right, do we have any other last comments or questions from anybody? All right, not hearing or seeing any. Thank you very much. Dom, if you wanted to go back to the last slide just for a second for your contact information. So if anyone has any additional questions, again, please feel free to reach out to me and or our town administrator, and we can forward this on to Dominic, or you can also reach out to him, for example, if you are one of the landowners and want to talk about the visual studies and other sorts of things that are more specific to you than general for the project. Again, we're more than happy to be involved with that if you would like us to be. And that's kind of where I will leave that. Dom, Michael, and I know he's in there someplace. Ben, do any of you have any last comments or questions to say about this?
I think from my perspective, it's mostly just thank you to everybody for taking the time and really putting a lot of thought into what we've been up to here. And we're really enjoying working with the town on things and looking forward to continuing to do so. You guys have been great on providing information, and we always appreciate thoughtful questions. So as Dave mentioned, if you ever have anything you want to chat about specifically, please do reach out. We really are happy to chat. And with that, I just wanted to say thanks, everybody.
I printed the maps, John.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Olivewood for being here and being receptive to questions.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm just going to second what Dom said.
I'll third.
All right. Well, thank you very much for showing up and for the presentation and answering all the questions and the discussion. We'll go ahead and move on then, which we've kind of had public comment in the process. So I'll allow that if anyone has any other comments that are beyond the maps and such. But while that is happening, I want to also work on the setting the next meeting. So if the folks on the subcommittee could take a look at their calendars, if we continue with the similar style, that would be April 20th, which would follow all of the other boards and committees, still being the same Tuesday at 7 o'clock towards the end of the month. We would be, of course, sending out all of these maps to chairs that, and so they can submit these also to their boards, commissions, committees to request more information. I believe Dom has
That's exactly where I was gonna when I was gonna comment, Dave. Thank you for that. And also, if those boards could have discussions amongst themselves on sort of who the appropriate person would be from that board to join us for the site walk. Again, we are happy to have folks, but we do want to sort of keep the group smaller at this time.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so that will be the request that will go out to the boards and committees and commissions. And that way we'll be able to bring all of that back at our next meeting. Does anybody have a problem with, or can everybody make the April the 20th for our next meeting? I see a thumbs up.
Yep, but I want to say after May 10th, the black flies will be really wicked. It'd be good to have our site walk before then.
Duly noted.
Speaking from years of experience.
Yeah, Dom, it's not mosquitoes, it's the black flies that we worry about.
Yeah.
They are terrible in the woods.
I can certainly appreciate that. We just want to make sure that particularly the environmental expert from the town is getting the maximum amount of benefit from the site walk. And if that means we get a couple black fly bites in order to get that person out at the right time, then it's unfortunate, but I'll be ready to take a couple bites.
Thanks. Well, you can have it. How about it?
Just buy a bug hat.
Yeah.
I've got something to add to my shopping list then.
All right. So hearing no issues with April 20th, we will go ahead and set the next meeting for April 20th at 7 p.m. Same as this. And of course, I will get the agenda and timing and postings up closer to that date for everybody. And before we close up, any further public comment or any further business that people want to discuss or bring up?
Can I ask a stupid question?
You might get a stupid answer, but absolutely.
Yeah, well, I was taking notes and I noticed that the number 35 we talked about, and then we said, no, it's really 75. And I went, what did the 75 refer to? Excuse me.
So the 35 was the original project size when it was mostly on the transfer station, and that is megawatts.
Megawatts, that's what I thought.
And now it is 75 megawatts.
It was 35 when we were interconnecting on the Hopkinton side. At that time, the majority of the generation was in Webster. And then we had to move to the alternative interconnection point and had to adjust the size to reflect that.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments or public comment? All right, seeing and hearing none, I would move that we close this meeting at 8:20.
Second.
All in favor? Thumbs up or aye? All right, thank you all for coming, and we will see you next month.
Thank you, Dave.
Everybody.
Thank you, Dom.
Thank you.